Hi. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to create the HTML that we're going to require in order to get this to work. Okay? So before we start, let's start to break this down a little bit. So by looking at this, there's a few things that are pretty apparent. Some of them we've talked about, some of them we haven't. Okay, so this top thing, this is likely an H1 tag, right? This one that's slightly smaller is an H2. And this one that's even smaller is probably an H3, right? There's also a list here, right? And this list has numbers, right? So we could think about here, is it an organized or unorganized list? Looks like it's organized because there's numbers, so there's probably an OL. These are individual lists, so there's some list items. There's some checkboxes. There's some bullets here, right? So this is probably an unorganized list. I'm sorry, yeah, unorganized list, a UL. There's checkboxes, right? There's some input fields, right? Because I can write things. However, in this one here, when I write, I get these like bullet looking things. So this is a password field. This is also a password field. However, there's this one thing that's kind of surrounding it all. This is called a field set. And a field set is sort of a grouping of I guess fields where you can start to group them together, and it allows you to add these little legends. These are really good for accessibility, which is we talk about a lot, to give a person some sort of context and awareness of what it is that they're about to start typing in. And what these sets of fields are trying to get at. So here, for example, here, like these are going to be more informational things that I want, and then there's something around favorite hobbies, and you can add as many as you want. Once we get into CSS, you can style these and make these look not so dull, but in the end, that's how it works. And then what we'll do is we're going to do a very simple version of this next HTML file. Actually, we got 1, 2, 3 here, and this is a pretty simple. Looks like there's an H1 and there's some text here. Okay, so all right, so let's get to this. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to go to Sublime, right? Say File New, File Save, and I'm going to save, and I'm going to just go into Demo here, and I'm going to create a file. It's going to be called form.html, right? Okay, so we got that. Next thing we want to do is we want to create our HTML header. So head, right? So this is just a bare minimum that we need for now. Okay, so we have our HTML, right? And then we're going to have another form, another HTML file. We'll just create over here, and this is going to be called file save. We're going to call this confirmation.html, right? Okay, and this is also going to have the same HTML stuff. Okay, so there we go. So now let's look at what we have to build. So let's look at this area here, and I'm just going to make this single view layout single. Okay. First thing we want to do is we want to create a header, right? So H1 and Acme company. Okay. So we got that. After that, we have an H2, and that's registration. Okay. So we're on a roll. Next thing we want to do is we want to create a field set, right? Field set is field set, right? And to get that little thing to show up on the top, we call that a legend, right? And we'll call that info, right? And we have to create 2 of these, so let's just copy and paste this. Now we have 2, and this one's called favorite hobbies. Okay. And then after the field set, there is an H3, right? Rules. And then we have a few list items, right? Like we mentioned, this is, because it's 1, 2, 3, this is an organized list, right? And then you have your list items inside, nested inside of that list item, you have, would you say rule 1, so you don't have to type it all. So rule 2, rule 3, and we'll copy and paste that later. Next thing we have are inputs, and we have labels, right? So let's go here, and we're going to say label, right? And that label is going to be for, we're going to create a username. So it's going to be a field. So for, that has to match the ID of whatever element that it's going to be associated with. So we're going to call this username, right? And then here, we'll create an input, and it's going to be type text, right? However, it's going to have an ID equal to the same thing, username, right? The other thing that we want to do here is we want to create a name. Okay, name equals, and we can call this, just so it doesn't get confusing, we'll call it uname. Okay. All right, so we have that, and then there's a space. So we can just copy this, right? We'll copy this here. Oops, I copied the wrong thing. Right. So we have this, and then here, and this, right? So we have password is going to be here. And then we have confirm password here. Okay, and now just make sure that we change all of these here. So what we could do here, so because we're in Sublime, we can just hold Command click and watch, just change these. Oops, that didn't work. Here we go. So we go here, Command click, and we can select them all and say this is password, and we'll say this is PW as a name, and then here this is confirm, right? And we'll say that I confirm, and we'll just say we'll say it's PW2, PW2. Oops, right? Okay, so we got that. However, these are inline, right? So if I were to test this right now, let's just look what it looks like. And you'll notice it's all in one line, right? So we need to have these skip a line. So let's go back here, and let's add just little, for now, there's better ways of doing this, but we're just going to add little breaks. Okay. So now we have breaks, save that, let's refresh here, and now we are on a roll. All right, let's go back here, and you'll notice that there are things in there. It says username, it says password, it says confirm password, right? To get that in there, you want to go into your input, and there's a placeholder attribute, and you can write a message there, right? So placeholder username, placeholder password, and placeholder confirm. Confirm password. All right, so we got that. Okay, so that's pretty much done. Let's just make sure, go here, refresh. Okay, we're on a roll there. Anything else? Okay, so now we want to create these checkboxes. All right, so let's go back to the checkboxes. We're going to go to this field set. First thing we want to do, so the checkboxes, it's a checkbox and then a label, right? So we go input, right? And it's not type text, it's now type checkbox, right? And then we want to do label. And my computer is struggling. Label for, we have to give this an ID, so we'll just say CH1, we'll do CHB1, checkbox 1, right? And we can come in here and we give an ID equals to checkbox 1. Okay, so now these are associated with each other. However, we need to give it a name, right? So the name of a checkbox, or actually we have to give it a value, right? The value here is going to be, so we'll say this we're going to be running, right? And we'll say the value is going to be running, right? And we're going to have a few more of these, right? And we're going to say running, walking, and talking. Okay, so we'll just say those are the things, my hobbies. Walking, talking. Okay. Now let's just check to see how this is working out. Refresh, and we have some checkboxes. Great. Right. And because the labels are associated, notice what just happened there. So when I clicked on talking, the label, it actually opened up. It checked running. So very good catch. And the reason for that is because this 4 is associating to, I haven't changed these IDs, right? So I need to change these. So this is going to be 2. This is going to be 3. That's right. It's important to test all the time. 2, 3. Okay. So now 4, these are all associated to the right ones. This is associated to that. This is associated to that. And now if I refresh and I do talk, walk, run, those all work now. Okay, great. Now I want to make these skip a line, so I can use the same sort of break that I was using before. Let's go add a break there, add a break there. Just move this over so it looks a lot neater. Right. Oops. Okay. So we got checkboxes. Now the one thing though is we're going to be sending this over, right, to the next page, right? And when you're in a form and you use something like a checkbox or a radio button, it's actually several input boxes, right? And because of that, we need the values of this checkbox is not necessarily 3 distinct values. They're all part of one group. In that group, you need to name that group. And in order to do that, you would have to use, instead of input, you have to write name, and we're going to call it hobbies, right? And all the checkboxes that are in that group are going to have to be the same name. So this is hobbies, and this is hobbies, right? So now what's going to end up happening is when I send this over anywhere, I'm going to get, I'm going to be able to make an array out of it, right? So it's going to send an array of hobbies, which is going to be anything that's been checked here, right? So let's just save that. Let's test this out here. And it looks like we are probably good. Let's look at what we had before. Am I missing anything? Hobbies. Oh, we need a register button. Oh, and we need one more thing. So we have this. Outside of that second field set, we have an input. And this is a type submit, right? And that's got a value of submit. So what this is, submit is a submit button. You can do this with a regular button too, but we're doing input, so I decided to use the input submit for this. And the last thing we need to do is all of these forms should be wrapped up inside of a form tag. So a form tag looks something like that. And there's 2 attributes that you need. One of them is action, the other one is method. And we'll talk about that in 1 second after I grab this and put it on the bottom, right under that last form element, that last input element, which is that submit, right? And you can grab all of this and tab just so it looks nicer, right? So you see all the nesting. And now we have forms, and now there's an action that has to happen. So the action, what you put in the action is typically, it's a URL. Where is it going to go? So for our purposes, we're just going to go to an HTML page. Typically, you would send all this data to another page that lives on the server, a server-side script, if it's Node or PHP or ASP or whatever. We're not going to go down that route for this particular example. We might play with that later. So what we're going to send it to is we're just going to send it to this HTML page. So confirmation.html, HTML, right? And that's going, so basically when I click on this submit button, it's going to send me to here, right? And when it sends me to here, we have to send this page data, right? There's two ways to send data. There's what's called a post here. You write it here as a post, and then there's a get, which would just be typed in as get, right? Now post, a get, with a get, and we're going to look at it right now actually. We'll just do get, and we're going to refresh this, and let's, we'll just do something here, say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and we'll register, and you'll notice it takes me to a get adds in this stuff over here on the right. Okay, so that's what a get does. A post doesn't give you this, and the reason why you want to use a post is right here as a perfect example. You typically wouldn't want to have your password show up on this address bar. You want that to be secret. Right, so you don't want to pass it through the URL. You want to pass it in a more secure way, and that would be post. Unfortunately, we can't really do post from HTML to HTML. You need to actually post to a server. So we're going to be focusing on get, but we'll get into post some other time. Okay, so actually, let's go back here. And here, if I were to test it from here, you'll notice that you're going to get a broken, oh, actually, ooh, if you notice, I just typed 123 on this password. So that's another problem we have here, right? So let's go back here. It's supposed to, this is actually not text. This here should be password, right? So password and password. Okay, let's test this one more time. We have a name, 123, that's better. 1, 2, 3, that's better. Click, click. And now we have it set to, if you look over here, we have method set to get, and it's going to confirmation.html. Confirmation doesn't exist. So when I click on here, it's going to go to, it's not going to find it. Or actually, no, we did create it. We did create an HTML file, but there's nothing on there. And then it's going to pass over this data, right? So awesome, we are getting there. So let's just create on confirmation.html. Let's just do a quick header here. So just do h1. I say congrats. Congrats. Save it. And now when we go back here, we'll just say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and submit. Now it says congrats, and it passes all this data. And we'll actually do something with this data after this. All right.